Yes. Hello, my name is Christopher Smith,
I am Sophia.
Markel.
I'm Chase. And I'm Jason.
and today we're excited to present our research on business customs and negotiation practices in Southern Asia, one of the region's most influential and dynamic economies. We'll be exploring the key elements you need to understand when entering into business negotiations in this part of the world. We'll begin our discussion with a geographical overview of Southern Asia, then dive into business norms, then talk about social traditions, gender expectations, the government system, nonverbal behaviors, greetings and introductions, social and business etiquettes, cultural respect, cultural relics, and verbal cues. So let's begin by taking a look at the region on the map and identifying the major players. We will be focusing on India first. India sits at the crossroads of South Asia, surrounded by key countries like China, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, and also bordering the Indian Ocean, which is a major global trade route. It's close to Central Asia, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia, making it a gateway for negotiations between the East and West. India's large economy, which is the fifth largest in the world by GDP, and fast-growing population, give it strong leverage in trade and political negotiations in the region. Major corporations and governments often involve India in multilateral talks, not just for trade, but also for technology, defense, and climate negotiations. Through regional partnerships like the SAARC, otherwise known as the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, India often plays the mediator or lead voice in negotiations. That then leads us into attitudes toward power and hierarchy. India scores high on Hofstede's power distance dimension, meaning hierarchy is respected and decision-making authority rests with senior leaders. In formal negotiations, the most senior ranking person is often the lead negotiator. Also, expect titles and formalities like Sir, Madam, Doctor, or Mr. or Miss, followed by last name to be used. Age and rank matter. Older or higher ranking individuals are given priority and deference in discussions. Don't mistake silence for disengagement. Subordinates may remain quiet out of respect for hierarchy, not lack of opinion. Indians may avoid direct refusals. Instead, they use polite or vague language. Reading between the lines is essential. Body language and tone matter a lot. That then leads us into our social traditions.
Yeah, I'm gonna start talking about the social traditions, specifically from Southern Asia, where building trust through social interactions is often a prerequisite for doing business. Often giving meals or tea or just something to eat, like even in informal gatherings, is a common way to foster like a relationship before like formal negotiations begin. Guests are usually treated with respect, like this is something that has always been done in Southern Asia, and hosting is seen as a sign of honor. Expect to be offered food or drink even during brief meetings. While alcohol may be served in some urban or higher level business settings, it is not usually accepted due to religious and cultural sensitivities. Regarding the gift giving, like modest gift givings like super common, and especially during festivals or after a successful deal. Gifts are more symbolic than extravagant. Like they usually give you just a small detail to show the respect that comes with it, and should be offered with both hands as sign of respect. They also tend to avoid gifts made of leather or alcohol when dealing with partners of certain religious backgrounds as themselves. Now I'll go to the next slide where I'll talk about gender expectations. Yeah, Southern Asia has deep-rooted traditional gender roles where women have historically been expected to prioritize family over their careers. However, this is gradually changing. Urban areas are seeing a steady rise in female entrepreneurs, executives, and professionals. While more women are entering the workforce, leadership positions are still male-dominated. Women in business often face social pressures and, in some cases, even like workplace discriminations, since they haven't been in the workforce for that long. Also, in many business settings, especially in conservative regions, female professionals may still be expected to dress modestly to show like less skin and avoid physical contact such as handshakes with male counterparts. That said, respect and professionalism are extended to women in business, particularly in more progressive or multinational levels. Now we'll go to the next slide where Chase will start presenting.
Government system. India has a federal system of government. The power is divided between the central government and state government. Each state has its own government that manages local affairs. The central government handles national affairs and issues. While India's laws are strict with an independent judiciary, corruption still exists. The more highly populated the area, the more likely corruption is to exist. Corruption is especially prevalent at local levels in big cities. Systems have been set into place to fight corruption, but only so much can be done. Bangladesh has a unitary parliamentary democracy. This means power is mostly centralized in the nation's government. While local governments exist, they have very limited power compared to the central authority. The rule of law exists in theory, but in reality it is weak due to the amount of bribery and corruption. Political influence is also an issue in Bangladesh. While both India and Bangladesh face problems with political influence and bribery, it is much more common in Bangladesh. Next slide. Nonverbal behavior. Culture has a large impact on nonverbal behavior in both Bangladesh and India. In both countries, respect and modesty are shown through body language. Direct eye contact can be seen as aggressive or disrespectful, especially when speaking with authority figures or elders. In both countries, people will often look to the side or down to show respect. When it comes to greetings, instead of a handshake, people will greet each other with Namaste in India or Salam in Bangladesh. People generally do this with their hands pressed together or slightly raised to show cultural respect and politeness. Personal space is important in both countries, especially between men and women. Touching, hugging, or signs of affection in public areas is usually avoided. In both cultures, using your left hand for eating, giving, or receiving things is often considered impolite. Most of these nonverbal behaviors have been shaped by religion, tradition, and respect for social hierarchy. And now we'll pass it on to Sophia.
Thank you, Chase. So what is considered good manners and what is something that might be considered offensive? During the first interaction while greeting someone, you want to do a nod or a soft "Assalam alaikum" or "Namaskar" if you're in Bangladesh or Pakistan. While in India and Nepal, an appropriate and respectful way to greet someone is to say "Namaste" while putting the palms together with a slight bow, as Chase already mentioned. And in Sri Lanka, a simple "Abawan" or a polite bow is considered appropriate. So as you can see, there's kind of a pattern going on where there's a preference of non-physical contact. So you should avoid being the one who initiate the physical contact, like hugging and backstabbing, especially if you're with the opposite gender. And in South Asia, you should always respect hierarchy. So you should use titles like Mr., Sir, Doctor when addressing someone who's older or superior. You should also be standing up if you're being introduced to someone who's older or of higher status. And we're moving on to the next slide. So in South Asia, it's very big on hospitality. So you should expect to be offered some kind of tea or snacks when visiting. And when this happens, you should always accept it, even if it's of the smallest of portions and even if you're not hungry. Not doing so could come off as rude and disrespectful. And when entering someone's home or religious building, shoes should always be removed. It's well known that shoes bring in dirt, and in some cultures it's more accepted and common to wear shoes inside, but is not appreciated in South Asia, and it's considered unclean and insanitary. You should also always use your right hand. In some places, it's accepted to use both hands simultaneously when offering or receiving anything. The left hand is considered impolite since it's portrayed as insanitary and unclean. Just as the left hand is considered unholy or unclean, so is the feet. So you should avoid pointing your feet at someone or something of religious value, as it's considered disrespectful. The opposite of the feet is the head, which is considered sacred. You should avoid touching both other people's feet and head. And if you accidentally do so, you should apologize immediately. Moving on to the next slide. One of the most important interaction in South Asia is the exchange of business cards. And to show them respect, you should always use your right hand or both hands when giving and receiving the cards. Then you need to take a moment to look over the card and read it over. Just as you show them respect by doing this, you also need to treat the card with respect. That means you shouldn't write on it, bend it, scratch it, or just put it away in your back pocket. While the exchange of business cards is important, something that's more important is to not rush business. All meetings should begin with small talk to build rapport. This could mean asking how the family is, talking about a recent trip, or something else. You should also always be modest in your body language, so you should avoid big or loud gestures and pointing. Something that is also highly valued is keeping a calm and polite tone of speech of all time. You should also always remember to be dressed conservative and informal in business attire, especially in professional or religious settings. So women should avoid showing their shoulders or wearing skirts that goes above their knees. Furthermore, you should also avoid criticizing someone in front of their face, in front of other people, as it causes loss of face, and try to avoid overly direct communication. People in South Asia often use a more indirect language when disagreeing to avoid confrontation. And we're moving on to the next slide. Lastly, South Asia values their culture extremely high, and so should you. You do not want to criticize and especially not mock their religious traditions or customs when visiting. It also helps to be aware of and respectful of fasting periods and prayer times. Now we're going to talk about some cultural relics, and we're starting with India. So their traditional attire is used in casual, religious, or traditional settings or events, and can be seen here in the photo. It's called sari for women and kurta pajama for men. Their probably most famous building is the Taj Mahal, which is a world-famous white marble palace, and it is considered a symbol of love as it was built by an empire in memory of his wife. We have two Indian classic dancers, and these are not just regular dances or art forms. They are considered a part of ancient history, and they explain stories and hold a cultural values. The first one is Bharatanatyam, and it originated in South India. It is known for more slow and precise movements focused on mudras, which is hand gestures, and it has more of a tempo-related theme. The second one is Kathak, which is a northern Indian dance, and it's characterized by more rapid footwork and spin, and more of a storytelling going through its dance and music. And we're moving on to Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, the traditional attire is called Salwar Kameez, and you can also see it in the photo here. And probably the most spectacular and magnificent monument in Bangladesh is the ruins of the Buddhist Vihara. This is one of the most famous example of architecture in pre-Islamic Bangladesh, and is one of the most important archaeological sites in the country. And lastly, we have Nokshi Kanta, which is a folk art where rural women create story-filled quilts using recycled fabric and colorful threads. That was all for me, and now I'm passing it over to Jason.
Hi, I'll be doing verbal cues. In Southern Asia, verbal communication relies heavily on indirectness, hierarchy, and respect. These cultures are strongly collectivist, meaning that maintaining group harmony is often more important than expressing individual opinions. As a result, being too direct, especially in business conversations, can seem as disrespectful or even aggressive. It's important for business people to recognize that communication in this region focuses more on relationship and the tone rather than the direct content of the message. One key feature of Southern Asian communication is the practice of saving face. In countries like India and Bangladesh, saying no outright is usually avoided because it can cause embarrassment or confrontation. Instead, people often use softer, indirect phrases like I will try, let's see, or that might be difficult. These expressions allow the speaker to decline politely without risking offense. Understanding and correctly interpreting these verbal cues is crucial for building trust and successful business relationships in Southern Asia. Next slide. In Southern Asia, particularly in India and Bangladesh, respectful titles and formality play a big role in business communication. Like I said earlier, titles like sir, madam, doctor, or professor are often used even when speaking English. It's very common for younger employees to address senior colleagues as sir, madam, as a show of respect and acknowledgement of hierarchy. In Bangladesh, in more personal and informal settings, professionals may also use honorifics like Bhai, meaning brother, or Appa, meaning sister, to build a sense of closeness and mutual respect. The use of formal and familial language helps strengthen professional relationships and maintain proper decorum. Another important aspect of communication in Southern Asia is blending of English and local expressions. In business settings, English is widely spoken, especially in India, but it often includes Indian English idioms that may sound unusual to foreigners. For example, someone might say, do the needful to mean please take care of this, or kindly revert to ask for a response. These phrases are normal in South Asian business communication, but they can be confusing if you are not familiar with them. Recognizing and adapting to these language patterns show cultural awareness and could help avoiding misunderstandings in professional interactions. Next slide. In Southern Asian business culture, silence is often used as a tool of respect and careful thought, not as a sign to disinterest or confusion. During meetings, it's very common for there to be long pauses after a proposal or important question. These pauses are not awkward, rather, they indicate that the listener is giving the idea serious consideration or perhaps consulting internally before responding. In India, Bangladesh, and neighboring countries, silence is valued communication strategy that shows mindfulness and deliberation. When it comes to tone, volume, and emotion, cultural expectations can differ within the region. In India, conversations can often seem animated or even loud, but this should not be mistaken for anger or disrespect. A high volume or passionate tone usually reflects excitement, energy, and engagement. In contrast, in Bangladesh, business conversations are typically more reversed and formal, especially when dealing with government officials or traditional corporate settings. Being able to recognize and adapt to these differences in style is important for building strong and respectful business relationships. Next slide. In Southern Asia, especially in India and Bangladesh, it's very common to use proverbs and indirect suggestions during conversations. Instead of stating disagreements directly, people often express them in a way that maintains politeness and avoids confrontation. For example, rather than saying you're wrong, someone might say there's another way to look at it. This softer phrasing helps protect relationships and keeps discussions respectful, even when there are strong differences in opinion. Understanding these subtle forms of communication is crucial for navigating business discussions effectively. There are a few important tips to keep in mind when working with Southern Asian business partners. Always avoid blunt refusals and instead look for indirect cues in the conversation. Using formal titles and maintaining a polite tone at all times is essential. It's also helpful to understand Indian English idioms if you are working in India, as they are often used in professional settings. Finally, remember to pay attention to nonverbal signals like silence or change in tone, and listen between the lines, because when someone says maybe, it often means no. Following these guidelines can help you maintain trust and communicate more effectively in Southern Asia. And that's it.
These are our references that we use to fulfill the presentation. We want to thank you for listening.